My best friend slipped Molly into my drink, and together with my boyfriend, a traitor hiding behind the facade of a perfect partner, they orchestrated a night of a calculated threesome. When I came to, the truth was crueler than the high. They had planned to turn me into their puppet all along. I never thought I'd be one of those people spilling their life story online. Yet here I am, hands trembling as I type these words on my old phone, sitting in a small coffee shop in downtown Portland, Oregon. I'm tucked away at a corner table, staring at a cold latte, trying to muster the courage to recount what happened, because I still can't believe it myself. My name is Lily, and I'm 29 years old. My boyfriend, or rather, the man I'm not sure I can still call that, is Caleb, 30. We met in our final year of college, dragged to a mutual friend's birthday party neither of us wanted to attend. Amid the awkward small talk and forced smiles, we bonded over our shared disdain for noise, pretense, and shallow connections. That night sparked something real. After graduation, we moved in together, and now, nearly 6 years later, we'd built a life that wasn't fiery or dramatic, but steady, calm, and respectful. We'd talked about marriage, but weren't in a rush. Everything felt fine. At least I thought it was. The third piece of this puzzle, the person I trusted like family, is Mason, also 30, Caleb's best friend since high school and one of my closest confidants through college. Mason is the kind of person who lights up any room, a freelance software developer who's never in one place for long. One day he's in Iceland, the next he's posting from Peru. He lives like every moment is an adventure, and I used to admire that about him. Never in a million years did I think Mason would be the reason I'd lie awake at night. Nauseous, heartbroken, and betrayed to my core. It all started a few days ago at a small birthday party for Mason's younger sister, Sophie, held at an artsy bar by the river. Mason had just returned from a month-long trip to Thailand, brimming with stories to share. Caleb, who sees Mason as a brother, was thrilled. And I thought Mason was the safest friend I'd ever have. After a few hours of mingling in the crowded bar, Mason suggested we ditch the party early. "The three of us need to catch up properly," he said, promising tales from Thailand in a quieter setting. This wasn't unusual. We're all closet introverts who often slip away from loud gatherings to talk in peace. We ended up at Mason's studio apartment, surprisingly tidy for someone who'd barely been home 3 hours. He showed us photos, cracked jokes, and recounted his adventures. Caleb roared with laughter at Mason's story of getting lost in a floating market, while I pored over pictures of ancient temples in Chiang Mai. Then Mason pulled a small vial from his backpack, filled with pale gray capsules. "Just herbal stuff," he said with a grin. "Bought it at a pharmacy in Thailand. Keeps you alert, fights jet lag." Caleb asked a few curious questions, and Mason handed him the vial. The label was in Thai, gibberish to me. I declined at first, and Caleb teased, "Probably just fancy vitamins." He popped one, and after a moment's hesitation, I followed suit. Why did I do it? Maybe because I thought, we've known each other forever. Mason would never hurt me. I trusted him that much. Little did I know my world was about to shatter. We settled back on the couch, chatting about Mason's travels while he ordered pizza. The vibe was cozy, familiar. We'd had countless nights like this, sharing stories about work, friends, life. A part of me felt grateful for friends like these. But after a few bites of pizza, I started feeling off. Not dizzy or sick. The opposite. I felt light, like an invisible weight had lifted. Everything around me seemed to sparkle. The apartment's lights glowed warmer, the couch felt softer, and the pizza tasted like the best thing I'd ever eaten. I laughed more than usual, talked more than I ever do, and found myself listening to Caleb and Mason with an intensity that felt almost supernatural, like I could see into their thoughts. I wasn't scared, just different. Until I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My pupils were huge, like I'd just stepped out of a dark room into sunlight. My hands were ice cold, but my face was flushed. I splashed water on my skin, expecting to snap out of it, but instead, The coolness felt like a gentle embrace. Strange, almost addictive. I stumbled back to the living room and said, I feel weird. Something's not right. Mason looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. Don't be mad, okay? But there was a little Molly in those pills. Not much, just a touch of MDMA. I froze. I hadn't misheard. Mason had slipped Molly into the pills, and I, completely unaware, had taken it. Caleb's reaction was oddly muted. He frowned and said, What the hell, Mason? But his tone wasn't angry. It was more like mild annoyance, not the outrage you'd expect from someone whose girlfriend had just been drugged. Me? I started to panic. I'd never touched anything stronger than wine or the occasional joint at a special event. MDMA? I didn't even know what it looked like, let alone want it in my system. But the drug was already sinking its claws into me. I wanted to be furious. I wanted to storm out. But that warm, fuzzy feeling, it held me back. It made me feel safe. When Caleb looked at me, his eyes sparkled like I was his entire world. He brushed my hair and whispered, Your hair's like velvet. I didn't know what was happening anymore. I remember we left the apartment and ended up at a park bench near Mason's place, a spot we'd hung out at countless times. We sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Conversations I thought I'd forget once the high wore off. But I remember every word. Mason said, I'm always laughing, traveling, exploring. But sometimes, seeing you two together, I get so jealous. I feel left out. Caleb admitted, Sometimes I'm scared. Scared I settled down too early. I wonder if I'm missing something extraordinary. I cried. Not out of sadness, but because my heart felt so full. I told them they were my family, the most important people in my life. But then, those heartfelt confessions took a darker turn. I don't recall who brought it up first. Maybe Mason. Maybe not. All I know is that the topic of inviting a third person into the bedroom came up. At first, I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But then Caleb said, It's not a bad idea. The trick is finding the right person. And Mason turned to me, his eyes locking onto mine. What if it was me? Those words, what if it was me, hit like a knife slicing through still water. I stared at Mason, stunned. My mind spiraled. He's joking, right? He has to be. This is Mason, our best friend. The guy who spoon-fed me soup when I had a fever, who stayed up all night listening to me talk about my parents' divorce. He can't be serious. Can he? But his gaze wasn't playful. It was calm, almost unnervingly gentle. He sat there in the chilly night air, looking at me and Caleb like he'd just invited us to dinner. Caleb took my hand, his touch warm but somehow chilling. Just tossing ideas around. He said softly, Don't worry, it's nothing serious, just we've thought about it before. I yanked my hand back like I'd been burned. Thought about it? Caleb looked sheepish. I mean, we've been together 6 years, Lily. I'm not saying I'm bored, but haven't you ever wondered if we're missing out? I couldn't answer. Part of me was still floating from the drug, and part of me felt my throat close up. Sure, I'd wondered. But I never thought Caleb would seek answers like this. Mason stayed quiet, watching us like he was waiting for a verdict. No pressure, no further words, but his eyes. They never left me. We sat there a while longer. 3 people, 3 tangled minds, none of us knowing what we were doing. As dawn crept over the horizon, Mason offered to drive us home. The ride was mostly silent, but I remember, when we reached our apartment, Mason leaned in and whispered, I'm sorry, for everything. I just didn't know how else to say it. I mumbled something back. Maybe, it's fine. Maybe, yeah. I don't know. My head felt like it had been through a hurricane, and I was just trying not to collapse. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache. Dried tears stained my pillow. Caleb was in the kitchen, cooking breakfast like nothing had happened. When I shuffled out, he smiled. Sleep okay? I didn't answer. I just sat at the table, watching him. Really watching. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't know who the man in front of me was. I clutched a glass of orange juice I didn't remember pouring. Caleb hummed to an indie song playing softly from the Bluetooth speaker, flipping eggs in the pan. To anyone else, this would look like a perfect morning for a happy couple. But I felt like I was sitting in a minefield. I studied him. Every move, every wince when the eggs stuck to the pan. It was also normal. And that's what scared me. You okay? Caleb asked, setting a plate of eggs in front of me. I nodded. Then I blurted, Did you know about the Molly? He froze, then laughed. What? Number you think I'd hide that from you? I don't know, I said quietly. You didn't seem surprised last night. He sat down, sighing. I was shocked too, but then it felt kinda nice, you know? Maybe the drug hit fast. Maybe because we trust Mason. I nodded faintly, but inside a storm was brewing. Trust? Trust to what extent? Trust to be drugged? Trust to entertain a suggestion like that? I didn't say more. But after breakfast, when Caleb left for work, I opened my laptop and dug into his old messages with Mason. I'd never been the type to snoop on a partner's phone, but that morning my gut screamed, Make sure, Lily. Their texts seemed normal, until I scrolled back 2 weeks. Mason. Ever think what it'd be like if the three of us were, together? Caleb. Like, Polly? Mason. Not exactly. Just think Lily might be open to trying if we bring it up, right? Caleb. What's your plan? Mason. Got something from Thailand. Natural, light. Helps loosen up, you just gotta trust me this time. My hands went cold. The last message stabbed my heart. Caleb. As long as it's not a big deal, I trust you. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, I just laughed. A bitter, icy laugh sharper than any disappointment I'd ever felt. So Caleb knew. Maybe he wasn't fully complicit. Maybe he just vaguely agreed. But to me, that was enough. The trust, the thing I valued most in our relationship, was trampled. I sat motionless on the couch, staring at the laptop like I could rewind time by rereading those messages. But time doesn't reverse. And trust, once broken, can't be glued back together. Caleb came home around 7 p.m., carrying takeout from my favorite Thai place. He smiled like nothing was wrong. Thought we could use a chill dinner after last night. You okay? I set the laptop down, took a deep breath. We need to talk. He paused, confused, then nodded and sat beside me, oblivious to the storm about to hit. I turned the screen toward him, pointing at the messages. Read. He went silent. For a long time. His face paled. His mouth opened, then closed, searching for an excuse. But nothing could clean this mess. Lily, he started. You knew, I said, my voice low and cold. You knew Mason was going to slip Molly into those pills. You didn't stop him, you didn't tell me, you even considered it. It's not what you think, he stammered. I thought he was joking. I didn't know he'd actually do it. I didn't know the pills were real. Then why didn't you react when I said I felt weird? Why did you tell me to try it? Because it all happened so fast. I thought we were just having a normal night. You know Mason, he jokes like that. I stood up. This isn't a joke, Caleb. This is drugging someone. This is betrayal. Not just Mason betraying me. You too. His face drained of color. I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear. I just thought you might like it. I thought you had a thing for Mason. I laughed. A raw, painful sound that made me want to cover my own ears. And that's why you let your best friend drug me? To see if I'd like it? I marched to the bedroom, shoving clothes into a suitcase. It wasn't our first fight, but it was the first time I knew I had to leave. Now Caleb followed, his voice shaking. Where are you going? Away from the two people I trusted most. Away from you. Away from Mason. You're leaving me over one mistake? I spun around, locking eyes with him. No, Caleb. I'm leaving because you're not someone I can love anymore. I dragged my suitcase to the door. He didn't stop me. Maybe because he knew there was nothing left to hold on to. That night, I called Alyssa, a coworker and friend. She was surprised but didn't hesitate when I asked to crash at her place for a few days. I slept on her small couch, my mind racing, my heart tearing itself apart. I woke the next morning numb, sunlight filtering through Alyssa's living room curtains. She was still asleep. I quietly got up, made black coffee, and sat back on the couch, the same one I'd cried myself to sleep on. My phone lit up. 12 unread messages. 8 from Caleb. 4 from Mason. I ignored Caleb's. But Mason's messages stopped me cold. Mason, 10:34 p.m. Lily, I know I screwed up. But what I hate most is you thinking you're the first. I'm not that heartless. It's just, things have never been misunderstood like this. That line looped in my head. Not the first. I opened Mason's Instagram, scrolling through old posts from his travels. Group photos in Bali, Prague, Buenos Aires. Then I saw it. A picture of Mason with Jenna, an old college friend I'd met a few times. The caption read, "Good times in Berlin." Jenna's comment below, "That night was wild. I'll never forget." A chill ran down my spine. I kept scrolling. Another comment from someone named Kara. "Nobody opens people up like you." I'm not naive. I started to piece it together. I wasn't the only one Mason had slipped Molly to. And maybe I wasn't the only one he'd suggested a threesome to. I messaged Jenna, despite never having talked one-on-one. "Hi, Jenna. This might be random, but what was the wild night in Berlin you mentioned on Mason's post?" I wasn't shocked when she didn't reply right away. But 3 hours later, while I was grabbing lunch with Alyssa at a bakery, my phone buzzed. Jenna. Lily? You okay? I don't know how much to say, but if you're suspecting something, trust your gut. I typed back instantly. Did Mason ever give you Molly without you knowing? Her reply came seconds later. Yeah, and I thought I was the only one. Until now. I went numb. Alyssa saw my face pale and asked, You okay? I nodded, but tears welled up. Not for Mason. Not for Caleb. For myself. For ever trusting them. That afternoon, I called Mason, my voice steady. The shock, anger, and disgust had hardened into something cold and unyielding. We need to talk. Meet me at Lucid Cafe on 7th. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. No, maybe. No, if you're free. No softness. I had nothing left to give. Mason showed up on time, as always. Same handsome face, gray cocky jacket, hair swept back, eyes that had charmed so many. But today, he repulsed me. I saw the manipulation, the lies, the disregard for boundaries behind his cool facade. He sat down, starting to smile. I raised a hand. Don't, I'm not here to laugh. He nodded, silent. I looked him in the eye, unblinking. How many people have you done this to? Mason swallowed. Lily, how many people have you slipped Molly to? Or helped open up like that? He sighed, his eyes pleading. Not many. Just a few. But I swear, nobody got hurt. I was always there, making sure it was safe. I just thought. Thought what? I snapped. That people don't deserve a choice? That if you think it's fun, we will too? Who do you think you are? He looked down, whispering, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd feel this betrayed. I thought you'd enjoy it. I laughed, not with humor, but with a bitterness that burned. No, Mason, you didn't think I'd enjoy it. You thought I wouldn't fight back. I pulled out my phone, showed him Jenna's messages. His eyes darted over the screen, and I saw real fear flicker in them. For the first time. I've talked to others. I said, and I'll keep talking. You can't hide this anymore. Mason clasped his hands on the table, his voice hoarse. I'll get therapy. I know I have issues. I didn't mean to be the bad guy. You didn't mean to be the bad guy, but you are. I cut him off. And I can't forgive you. I stood, grabbed my wallet, and started to leave. He called after me. What about Caleb? What are you going to do with him? I paused, turning back, my eyes piercing his. I don't know. But one thing's for sure. I'll never see either of you as family again. And I walked out, not looking back. For the first time in years, I wasn't the girl who always forgave. For the first time, I saw my boundaries clearly. I got back to Alyssa's around 9 p.m. She was sprawled on the living room floor, eating ice cream straight from the tub, watching a Friends episode she'd seen 100 times. She glanced at me, questioning with her eyes. I shook my head, said nothing, and sank onto the floor beside her. She handed me a spoon without a word, and that silence meant more to me than any comfort could. That night, on Alyssa's air mattress, I stared at the ceiling, wondering, if Caleb apologized, could I forgive him? If he truly didn't know Mason's full plan, what then? If, just if, I was letting emotions cloud the truth? I hated that I still considered him. 6 years of love don't vanish overnight. The next morning, I decided to swing by our apartment. Not to stay, but to grab more clothes and essentials. I texted Caleb I'd be coming, avoiding an unnecessary run-in. He replied faster than I expected. I'll be at work, come by anytime. Let me know if you need anything. The apartment was unchanged, except for one thing. Caleb's laptop, still on. And like some invisible force pulled me, I walked over. I knew I shouldn't snoop. But after being betrayed once, your survival instinct doesn't let you ignore a hunch. I didn't expect to find much. Just opened the browser. But the first thing in the search history stopped me cold. How to introduce MDMA in relationships without scaring your partner. I swallowed hard. I opened his email, typing Mason into the search bar. An email popped up, sent from Caleb to Mason 3 weeks ago. I'm not sure Lily would go for it, but if there's a way to make her comfortable, maybe it's worth a shot. Attached was a PDF titled Guided Experiences with Couples and MDMA, Trust-Building Exercises. My hands shook. No more doubts. This wasn't impulsive. It was a plan. A project Caleb had signed onto with Mason. I stood frozen in the living room, looking around. The couch where we'd fallen asleep watching movies. The dining table where we'd talked about kids. The bookshelf I'd color-coded, which he'd teased was my mild control freak side. Now, it all felt hollow. I grabbed a few clothes and nothing else. I didn't want any memories. Before leaving, I left a note on the kitchen counter. I don't need apologies. I need respect. And you stopped giving me that a long time ago. The door's closed. This time, I'm not coming back. I stayed with Alyssa for a few weeks. Not because I had nowhere else, but because I couldn't face a place that reminded me of being so easily led. I started running every morning, journaling at night, telling myself I was surviving. Literally. Caleb kept texting, like clockwork, with the same tired lines. I miss you. I'm not a bad person. Give me a chance. I didn't reply. Each message just showed me a man who'd traded my trust for an experience. One day, at a cozy bookstore cafe, I got a message from an unknown account. Hi, Lily. I'm Marin, an old friend of Mason's. I know what happened. And I've been through it, too. My heart skipped. We met at a park. Marin, about my age, had tired but resolute eyes. She told me about dating Mason briefly 2 years ago. During a group trip, he'd offered her something without explaining what it was. When she confronted him, everyone called her overly sensitive. I spoke up, Marin said, but no one believed me. I'm glad someone finally walked away from him. I went quiet. I thought I was strong for leaving, but I was just the first to say it out loud. As we parted, Marin looked at me and said, Don't let them label you overreactive. What they did was wrong. And you did the right thing. That night I went home, deleted every photo with Caleb, unfollowed Mason. No announcement, no regrets. I realized I owed nothing to anyone's memories but my own. Fall in Portland turned crisp. Leaves changed, the air smelled of shift. I went to work, kept my life tidy, tended to my plants, and picked up drawing again. A hobby I'd dropped because I was too busy loving. Caleb stopped texting. His last message was 2 words. I understand. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Time had answered for me. Mason vanished from social media. A friend said he'd canceled an overseas work trip, gone unusually quiet. I didn't care. To me, he was just a name. A scar that had healed, no longer painful. I didn't jump into new relationships or reinvent myself to be stronger. I just lived. Truly. One weekend morning, I woke up, made coffee, opened the window, and sat listening to the rain patter outside. No fear, no anger, just a lightness. I was okay. Not because anyone made me okay. Because I'd walked through the pain and come out the other side, alone.